Hello, hello, everybody. Megan Thompson with Megan. And I'm just making sure that my headphones are in. Great. Okay, cool. All right. So today we are here to discuss what to do when you're worried that your child is manipulating you. So we hear this at times when we speak to parents, and we wanted to cover this pretty thoroughly today. I want to make sure that I am organized with my notes here. Now, what's going on when we hear parents worry about whether or not your child is manipulating you, right? What's really going on in this moment, your child is having a big meltdown, you're trying to get out the door, you're trying to start school, you're trying to manage the schedule, help your highly sensitive child's sibling, what have you. And in the moment, your child is feeling big feelings and struggling. And so when that happens, what runs through your mind is my kid doing this on purpose, right? What am I going to do in that moment? Is she just manipulating me? Is she just trying to get a rise out of me? Is she doing this for attention? Now, again, as you all know, the drill, right? Tell me, I see several of you are watching. Let me know, say hi if you're here live, hashtag replay if you're on replay. And I just realized I don't have my light on, so this might be a little, let's see if we can get some better lighting. I don't know if that's gonna work. Here we go, maybe a little bit better. Setting up a different setup in my office at home, so trying to get this all figured out. Anyways, hi, yeah, okay, great. So now what we're focusing on, guys, in this moment when your child is struggling is really what's running through your mind in the moment, right? As a parent, you're trying to get whatever it is that you need done, whether it's, getting your child to sit at the table, do their schoolwork, or follow through on chores, or get dinner on the table, get to bed, right? Whatever it is that your child is struggling with. And when your child is having a meltdown or at refusing or saying no, screaming, yelling, hitting, kicking, especially if this is happening on a daily basis, then it's very possible, very common for a parent parenting a highly sensitive child to jump to the thought that your child is doing this on purpose. Especially, we often can hear this when one parent's been doing all the research and the other parent has been focused on other priorities in the family, and so been reading less about parenting than one spouse. And so this is important if you're in a two-parent household. Make sure you're both watching this video. So what's happening at that point for you is not only the thought process and worry that your child is doing this on purpose and manipulating you and trying to get a rise out of you, but also the thought that, she knows that this drives me crazy, or she knows every day that we do, after dinner, we play a game together, or after dinner we have only 30 minutes before it's bedtime. I have no idea why on earth she would freak out every time we have to transition. And that's what's going on through your head, right? You're just spinning through this thought process of frustration, anger, and all the emotions going on. It just feels like at this point, the umpteenth time, your kid is freaking out for seemingly no reason. And it's very hard at this point as a parent to stay with your child in that emotion, to help your child move through it when you're going through that emotion yourself, that frustration, that anger. And when this is going on, you notice that, right? We know that that's happening. And so what I really want to do at this point is cover not what's going on for your child, but really what's going on for you, so that you know exactly how to break out of that cycle. So one of the things that we know for certain that highly sensitive children struggle with is communicating their emotions safely. And without those skills, and without being able to tell you that they're disappointed that the schedule is the same as it has always been, or that they're frustrated that they don't know how to get what they need, or that they really don't want to stop their game right now, they have 5 more minutes, or they wish they had 5 more minutes, or they're sad that brother got extra cookies, or whatever it is that is or that brother got a hug from you and you didn't volunteer a hug for them for whatever reason. Honestly, guys, it can drive you crazy because you have no idea how to predict how your child is going to experience any emotion. And a highly sensitive child has so many expectations about how the day is going to go that if you predict 3 things, it's 7, number 4, 5, 6, and 7 could be happening that day. And so you're spinning, your head can feel like it's in a washing machine at the end of the day, just trying to get out ahead of this and trying to predict how your child's going to experience the world, right? And so it makes perfect sense that you're feeling very confused, very frustrated, and not knowing how to get out of it. Now, when you're having that thought that your child is just trying to get out of the responsibilities or just trying to get a rise out of you or just trying to look for a way to communicate their needs and ineffectively because they don't want to be effective, right? So like they don't want to be kind. They don't want to be nice to you. They're mad at you, and so therefore they don't want to ask nicely. That puts you in a pretty big trap as a parent, right? Thinking and assuming and believing and putting a stake in the ground that your child doesn't want to feel miserable, and deciding that that's not true for your kid, that your child actually prefers to be mad at you, prefers to want to control you, etc. We all know that that's not accurate, right? Your child is a child. Your child doesn't have the skills that you do as an adult to remember at the forefront of their brain how their actions will lead to consequences. It's just child development. It's how the brain is built. So the brain is not built to think about consequences of actions consistently, considerably, and when in emotions until beyond the age of 25. So what happens? You need to be able to have the skill as a parent to teach your child how to calm their emotions in order for them to remember A plus B equals C, right? What I choose to do in the moment leads to the consequence of that action, which then might lead to even further consequences, right? So if I am, let's break this down, stop talking in vagaries, right? Let's talk specifics. You try to, you tell your child that there's 5 more minutes left in the TV show and then it's bedtime. And they know, that they get extra stories if there's time, right? They usually want your child, let's say she's 7. She usually wants you to read to her 3 stories at night. And if all goes well, when things are when she's able to manage her emotions, you have plenty of time in the bedtime routine to do those 3 stories. But if your child loses her shit, then there's no way you're going to have that time, right? You know that as a parent, and you're like, why are we doing this over and over and over and over again? Why isn't she learning? Why doesn't she understand that if she, in that moment, freaking out about 5 more minutes on the TV or 5 more minutes playing Legos or 5 more minutes with her dolls or whatever, leads to not enough time for the stories at bedtime. And then that leads to another meltdown, right? The disappointment, frustration, and stuckness. And so as a parent, you can feel totally sucked into this vortex of feeling like your child is in charge of how the day goes and then having no idea how to get your kid out of it. And so the other half of you is like, but she's 7. So who's supposed to lead her? You, right? And so what emotion happens for you? Guilt, shame, embarrassment, frustration. Again, it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle that you're both stuck in. And so what is super important for you to understand is that frustration, that emotion that's coming up for you, is my child manipulating me? That thought process is tied to an emotion for you. And that emotion is helplessness, powerlessness, victimhood, and resentment. So let's talk about it, guys, because it's super crucial for us to get you this clarity that this is a symptom of the big problem of not being able to break down the meltdown cycle, okay? So I made a semi-fancy picture for you. Let's make sure that my body is in the right spot. I always do this. And And so here we have it. Okay, so here's the image. This is the snowball of emotion that a parent of a highly sensitive child who is stuck in the meltdown cycle gets into. Okay, so I want to use this metaphor of a snowball rolling down a hill. Okay, so for you in general, you're typically living up here. Frustration, sadness, worry. How are we going to stop this? Where is this going? When is this going to end? If we don't fix this, what's going to happen, right? I'm using my cursor and I don't even know if that's going to work. So you see up here, right? I can't like point over the image. My tech is not that fancy. I'm not a graphic designer, guys. I'm a therapist and coach by trade. So bear with me. I was using my cursor and like remembering that I'm not sharing my screen. Zoom has trained me well. So anyways, frustration, sadness, and worry, right? The top of the snowball hill, okay? That's where you're living on a daily basis most of the time, unless your kid is in a happy mood. If you're dealing with this meltdown cycle, usually what we see is that parents are controlled by their child's capacity at that moment to manage their emotions. So if your kid is stuck in managing their emotions and you don't know how to get out of it and you don't know how to lead them out of it, then it can feel very frustrating and often like you are at the whim of your child's emotions. And so what happens? You move down to here. Anger, resentment, blame, and dread. I don't know when this is going to happen next. You're on edge, right? You're hypervigilant. I don't know when my child is going to pop off, when the next meltdown is going to happen. You know that this is happening. I see the likes happening on this video, right? Anybody else been here, done that, right? You know that. And so this is you at the middle of the hill, guys. So if you're experiencing this and you're wondering, you know, is my child manipulating me? Newsflash, you are in resentment. You are in anger. You are in blame. Because what is that? I have no control over this. My kid must be controlling me. That's blame. And you know as a parent that it is not your child's fault that they don't know how to control their own emotions. That is a skill deficit that they need to build. And who better to teach them than you? Now, that's not a philosophical question, guys. That's also, hi, Teresa. Yeah, exactly. It's backed by the research, guys. It's called differential susceptibility. Any of you who have watched my masterclass, you know all about it. Children who are highly sensitive are much more susceptible, much more malleable, much more influenced by their relationship with their parents and their home environment than by any other relationship in their lives. And so what that means is if your relationship with your child is typically in frustration, sadness, blame, worry, and then you move to anger, resentment, blame, and dread, then your child's emotions are being addressed by that. And that's the cycle that we're talking about. Make sure that my finger is in the video. That's the cycle, all right? So it's up to you as a parent to shift out of that cycle. Now, what happens if you don't? If you don't shift out of that cycle, if you don't support your child in managing their emotions and controlling the environment in their home, or if you teach them that they are the one that needs to build those skills by just focusing on coping skills and helping them stay focused on learning skills on their own without teaching yourself and changing the environment by changing the routine, by changing the way that you correct their behavior, by changing the way that you teach them how to build new skills, then you are perpetuating the problem. You're staying stuck, but without knowing it, right? Now, here's the deal. I'm being clear, concise, and blunt because I've been doing this for 10 years plus. But it's also because we're the only ones who are telling you the opposite of what everybody else is saying. So I have to be pretty honest about it because everybody else is telling you that you just need to do one little thing about this. You just need to teach your kid how to take deep breaths properly. Or you just need to help your kid fall asleep and they'll be better off. Or you just need to get your kid to sit at the table and do their schoolwork and then they wouldn't have a problem. And that is what I consider to be a piecemeal process. If you're not tearing up the roots of the frustration, which is the deficit that your child doesn't understand how to manage their big emotion, and then decrease it and funnel it down, if you will, so that it stops being this big cloud. I often talk about the big emotions for highly sensitive kids being like Pigpen's dust bubble, covering them, right? It's not just trailing behind him, it's covering your child. And because as a parent, you need the skills to notice that and help your child separate that and those particles of dust, get the Charlie Brown reference, I hope, and put that into a container and help your child notice that they have big feelings, but they can manage them, and that they don't just fly off the handle at the drop of a hat and in fear. Then as a result, you're not living in this resentful place, right? Because you have control. You know exactly what to do. You know exactly what to say. You know exactly how to teach your kid how to manage their big emotions. Now, if you don't have those skills and you're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, then it gets to the point, hi Carrie, glad, it gets to the point where you're stuck in hopelessness. You start to feel like this will never fix itself, right? You'll never fix it. And as a result, you start to feel powerless. I don't know what's working. I don't know what's not working. Some days it works. Some days it doesn't. I can't predict my child's behavior. I have no idea how my child is going to act today. They might be cool with school. They might not, because it's unpredictable. And then what happens is you start to think that you're the victim in the situation. You start to think that your child is doing this behavior to you. That's the worry monster in your brain saying, your kid is doing this on purpose. Your kid is manipulating you. Your kid has to have some control in this matter because you haven't been able to figure it out. And as humans, it's the human condition for us to be able to figure out a way to get out of our own circumstances, right? We are all problem solvers and fixers, especially if you're watching these videos and you're following us, because as a system, you want your child to feel better. You want your child to feel better. And unfortunately, in the shame cycle that your child is in with the meltdowns, they are waffling in the same spin cycle that you are. So if you don't build the skills to shift them out of that shame, out of that incapacity to manage their emotions, teach them exactly how to manage their big emotions in a way that makes them feel safe and without feeling like they're to blame at the end of it, then what happens? We see your child do things that they regret and then feel guilt and shame about them. And you're doing things that you regret, right? Yelling, being upset, and taking things away when you know that doesn't work, threatening to, end privileges, etc. And you know none of that works. And so that guilt and that fear and that frustration builds. And again, you're just back sliding down the same hill. I'm not effective at using my finger as a pointer here. I'm just going to pretend that you get where I'm coming from with this. So I always love making visual aids, and then my system is not Zoom. And so when we think about this, right, what you're noticing is that you're just sliding down that same cycle. Let's make sure maybe I can even just be at least in the same curve here for you. So you feel like a shitty parent at that point. And that's not the objective here. That's not the plan. But honestly, guys, the industry, in terms of supporting you as a parent and parenting advice, is setting parents of highly sensitive kids up to fail. It is, because it's trying to teach you about the highly sensitive brain, or it's trying to teach you about children in general, or it's trying to teach you about how to manage yourself calmly, or it's trying to teach you how to help your kid in the school setting only, or it's trying to teach you how to help your kid in, how to go to birthday parties properly. That's one part of the puzzle. One part of the puzzle when you look at all those things. And guys, you're not building Frankenstein. You're raising a child. So when you look at it from a place of just picking apart the day-by-day problems one by one and trying to tackle it, No wonder it feels like whack-a-mole, because you're not addressing the root of the issue, which is the fact that your child doesn't know how to manage big emotions in a way that makes them feel calm, capable, and can creatively solve their own problems. And that is just not something that you can solve with a conversation or a coping skill. For either of you, whether you're giving yourself a conversation, a pep talk, or you're having a good chat with your spouse or co-parent about how the fact that your kid feels big feelings and it's hard for them, those conversations are going nowhere. That's why for some of you, many of you who have been to therapists before and you have those nice conversations on a couch and you walk home feeling like, yeah, I can do this. And then you go home and you try to, spit that nice conversation back out to your kid, and your kid says, no, or meow. I mean, literally, we have had many conversations with parents about how their kid literally just speaks cat when they're frustrated. And that's not a joke. If you guys, type in the chat, post an emoji, give me a like, whatever, when your kid has hit their limit, sometimes they're not even speaking English if that's their primary language. They're not even speaking a language that you speak. And so if that's the case, then you need to learn how to speak the foreign language of parenting a highly sensitive child. Without it, you're stuck in hopelessness. You're stuck in frustration. Because think about this. You get dropped at a, yes, Stephanie, cat, dog, wow, roof, erg, grr, right? This is what's happening in your household. We know it. I'm trying to think. Snake. I see this. Thank you. It's a thing. I'm not kidding. Being a play therapist for over a decade, watching children struggle significantly in front of their parents, and then coaching parents internationally. I'm not making this shit up, guys. We see it all the time. I train my therapist to learn how to speak cat. I'm not kidding, because it's part of the problem. It's part of the problem. Your child doesn't know how to communicate with the words that are developmentally appropriate for them. And that is not something that you can match without a system in place. Think about it. You're walking into, I'm just going to throw an example out. You travel abroad, you fly in, you make it to your destination, and you're walking up and you're saying, hi, I need to get to the bathroom. And the guy's looking at you like, who are you? Some silly American. I'm just going to stick with the stereotype, because most of our clients at this point are in the US. But like, who are you? Some silly, entitled American not knowing our language. You can't even pull up Google Translate at this point. Like, our phones do that these days. And so guess what? That's the same face your kid is giving you. Who are you, Mom? How do you not know how to speak my language? You're my parent. And what happens? You feel like a crappy parent, because you're not speaking the same language. It's not to say that your intentions aren't there. You want to help your kid. I'm not saying you are a crappy parent. You're an awesome parent with an awesome kid. But what you're missing is the awesome skills that gets them out of this cycle. And that's what we're here to help you do. So when we think about why you're stuck in the position of feeling like your kid is manipulating you, it's not because that emotion is based in fact. It's because that emotion has slid you down the hill from frustration, sadness, and worry to anger, resentment, blame, and dread. And now you're circling the drain of hopelessness, apathy, powerlessness, and victimhood. My kid's in charge of me. And that perpetuates the shame for you as a parent. Guys, there's a way out of this. You have to systematically learn how to speak the foreign language of highly sensitive children. You have to know that it's not just about the fact that you're highly sensitive and maybe you can understand it, right? Because I can say, necesitamos hacer una cita para su terapia, right? I know how to make an appointment for your therapy. And I can understand somebody who says, miércoles a las 6, right? 6 o'clock on Wednesday. I can speak a little bit of Spanish. I can schedule an appointment in Spanish because I worked with the population for years. But I certainly cannot have a therapy session in Spanish because I just wasn't skilled enough. And so I was doing those families a disservice if I didn't have an interpreter in the office with me. And thankfully, I was blessed to work with a government agency that provided us with that support, because otherwise it was mistreatment of the client. And when we think about what's going on for you as a parent, if you guys aren't speaking the same language, you have beautiful intentions to raise your child with the skills to manage their emotions so that they can believe you, that they can take on the world, feel certainty and believe themselves that they can take on the world, and that they can love themselves and know that they can do whatever they want to do, whatever they put their heart's desire to. But the fact of the matter is that if you're not speaking the same language and you're jumping to the thought process that your child is manipulating you, then they don't feel heard or understood. And they don't believe you when you say, you can do anything. Because bottom line is, you don't believe it either. And we got to get you out of that, because nobody was put on this earth to feel miserable. And when you feel manipulated by your own child, that is miserable. Miserable. Because the very second you catch yourself in that thought process, if you catch yourself, or once you catch yourself, you know that that's not what's really going on here. So you need the support and the strategy to break out of this cycle. The strategy is simple, guys, but the way to get out of it takes hard work. And it's not something that anybody else is offering you at this point. And that's why we know for certain we can help you only if we have a conversation. Because I don't know where you're at. I don't know if you've gotten so stuck into that hopelessness and that helplessness that it no longer scares the shit out of you. That instead you show up to the conversation flippantly, sarcastically, thinking that it's cool, or that you're good, you're fine, and everything's going to work its way out. If that's the case, and we don't have a real conversation about the fact that that's just a defense mechanism and you want to get out of it, then we aren't the right fit. And I'd have to send you to a different place. And maybe it is going to take a lot longer for you to figure this out. But I can't figure that out. My team can't figure that out if we don't have a conversation. So we break it down. We help you know exactly what you need to do so that you can speak the language of your child, so that your child stops feeling like you feel like they're manipulating you. So your child stops fearing that they are in control of your behavior. That's pretty scary for a kid, to think that they're in charge of an adult, right? Children need to trust you as the adult to know what to do. And you need to know that you can trust yourself to know what to do, right? And so we teach you exactly what to do. We give you the scripts to say it until you make it into your own words even. And then we help you change your child's behavior systematically in a way that doesn't perpetuate shame, in a way that doesn't take away privileges as the first strategy to keep them under your thumb, because that won't work. It didn't work when you were raised. It didn't work when your spouse was raised. It didn't work when you tried it on a whim or in the middle of frustration. And so we don't do that. We don't use threats. We don't use punishments. We use caring and compassion and playfulness to teach your child how to change the way that they communicate their needs, get their needs met, and ask for help when they're struggling, so that they can say, Mommy, I need 5 more minutes, please, instead of 5 more minutes and then explosion. Or you never let me have 5 more minutes. Wait a minute, you didn't ask today. I actually have the wiggle room in my schedule. Right? And that's where you feel manipulated, because if your child's communicating it in that way, you never let me, then you feel like your back's up against the wall because you have to prove your kid wrong. And that is a skill deficit. Your child needs to learn how to say it, but not from a place of you just repeating yourself. Well, you know, Johnny, if you had just said it this way, we would have probably avoided this whole mess in the first place, right? And Johnny says, yeah, I know, Mom. I love you. I'm sorry I yelled and threw that at Stephanie, his sister, who's 4, and got hit with a Lego. Like, none of that is something, or worse, right? Whatever toy he had in his hand that was bigger than the Lego, or the whole Lego house, or the table. I mean, I'm not sugarcoating things. We see this happen all the time, guys. I'm not trying to, create this for dramatic effect. This is exactly what's going on in your home. And the reason why we know that is because we help people solve it, which means we hear their stories and we talk to them in the moment and get them out of it. And so you have to trust that that's something that we know what to do. And if we can help you, then we tell you how. And if we're the right fit, we show you how that works. And we have to do that on a conversation. So if you're stuck in figuring out how to communicate to your child that you understand them, that you know how to speak their language, you know how to playfully help them change their behavior, and you know how to help them do that without shaming them into performing for you or doing it so that it keeps you happy, so that you no longer feel resentful, frustrated, and stuck in hopelessness and powerlessness on a daily basis, and looking for those pockets of joy to yearn for or to wait for or to hope that your kid eventually falls asleep. If that's what you want, then get on the phone, guys. We're here for you. You can go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk, and we'll support you in figuring out exactly what your next steps are, whether that's to work with us to figure out the problem, or if there's something else that you need to address first or instead. And as I mentioned a few times today, we can't do that in a text message, in a quick conversation, in a, my child freaks out at bedtime, what do I do question. There's a lot going on in that question. I don't know the answer to that. We have to figure this out. We have to see how long it's been happening, what emotional experience you're having, what emotional experience your kid is having. We have to do a proper assessment. Otherwise, I'm helping you raise Frankenstein just like we talked about too. And then we become part of the problem. And guys, when you're the leaders in this space and you know exactly what people are doing wrong, and you don't know how to help people, and you're just giving out these, quick fixes, that's just not what we're willing to do, because you deserve better. Your family deserves better, and your child deserves to stop feeling miserable on a daily basis. You know that. So I encourage you to book a call. meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk. I'll put the link in the comments here for you to get after it. We have some spots available this week even, and we'll be certain to support you in knowing exactly what you need to do and what your next steps are by the time you finish the conversation. Okay? Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. Bye.